I've always been a quiet kid. My parents thought it would be good for me to try some kind of sport or activity to help me come out of my shell. That's how I ended up in Taekwondo. At first, I wasn't sure about it, but as time went on, I really started to enjoy it. It gave me confidence I never had before. I started when I was 8 and now I'm 10. I'm still only a yellow belt, but that's because our academy takes things slow with us younger kids. They want to make sure we really master each level before moving up. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes, but I understand why they do it. Anyway, every Wednesday I have to wait outside the academy for about 15 minutes after class. My sister has dance lessons, and my parents pick us both up at the same time. It's not so bad. I just sit on the bench and play games on my phone. One Wednesday, this new kid showed up. He looked about my age, maybe a little older. He was a white belt, so he was brand new to Taekwondo. I didn't think much of it at first, but then he started bothering me. The new kid called out to me, demanding that I show him some moves because I was a yellow belt. I politely declined, explaining that I was just waiting for my ride and suggested he ask one of the instructors instead. But he wouldn't take no for an answer. He accused me of being lame and insisted that as a higher rank I should teach him. I tried to ignore him and focus on my game, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He kept poking me and trying to grab my phone. I asked him to stop, telling him I didn't want to show him anything right now, but he just taunted me, asking if I was scared and betting that I didn't even know any real moves. This went on for a while. I kept telling him to leave me alone, but he just wouldn't listen. He started trying to do kicks and punches near me, acting like he was some expert. The new kid boasted about his skills, claiming he could beat me in a fight. I raised my voice, telling him to stop and leave me alone. He got really close to my face, making fun of me. I was getting really upset and scared. Before I knew what I was doing, I slapped him across the face. He stumbled back, looking shocked. The new kid cried out in pain, accusing me of hitting him and threatening to tell on me. He ran off to his aunt, who was waiting nearby. I felt terrible. I'd never hit anyone outside of practice before. I was sure I was going to get in big trouble. The next day, my dad called me. He said the head instructor had checked the security cameras and saw everything that happened. The instructor told my dad that I had handled the situation well, considering how much that kid was bothering me. He even said the new kid was lucky I only slapped him. I found out later that the instructor kicked that kid out of the academy. I never saw him again after that day. I felt a little bad about it, but mostly I was relieved. Now, almost a year later, I'm about to test for my low blue belt. I'm taller and stronger, and definitely more confident. That incident taught me that it's okay to stand up for myself, but also that I need to be careful with the skills I'm learning. Taekwondo isn't just about fighting, it's about discipline and respect too. I'm glad my parents put me in Taekwondo. It's changed me in ways I never expected. And whenever I think back to that day with the new kid, I can't help but smile a little. Not because I'm proud of hitting him, but because I'm proud of how far I've come since then. My saga starts with our school's annual toy team project. You know, one of those educational experiences that's supposed to teach us teamwork and creativity, but mostly just causes headaches. I was in 8th grade, and let me tell you, I was not looking forward to this project. See, I've always had a hearing disability that requires me to wear an earpiece. It's made me a bit of a target for bullies over the years, so I tend to keep to myself. My best friend, who uses a wheelchair, was thankfully in my group. We were excited to work together until we found out who our third teammate was. Enter the class genius. This kid was in 7th grade but took high school classes because he was so advanced in math and science. His parents were big donors to our private school, so he basically got away with murder. And boy, did he know it. From day one, he took over our project. The genius kid declared himself the expert and ordered us to just write down what he said. When I tried to suggest that I enjoyed building things and maybe we could work together, he shut me down. He told me I was terrible at math and science and should stick to what I was good at, taking notes. I wanted to argue, but I was too scared. My friend and I just exchanged looks and did as we were told. For weeks, we endured his bossiness and insults. Then came the day we had to test our toy glider. As Genius Kid was getting ready to launch it, I noticed the rubber band looked stretched out. I warned him that the rubber band might snap and suggested we adjust it. He dismissed my concerns, claiming he had everything under control. Our teacher overheard and stepped in. She instructed Genius Kid to listen to his partners and adjust the glider. Genius! Kid rolled his eyes but did as he was told. Sort of. He yanked the glider back way too hard and fast. The rubber band snapped, hitting him in the face and shattering our glider. Genius Kid turned to me furious. He blamed me for the incident and insulted my abilities in math and science. That was it. I had enough. I burst into tears and ran out of the classroom, all the way home. My dad, who happened to be working from home that day, found me sobbing in my room. After calming me down, I told him everything. Dad hugged me tight and assured me he wasn't mad at me, but at that kid. He told me he had an idea to teach him a lesson. The next day, our teacher pulled us aside. She explained that due to yesterday's incident, we'd be working separately now. She told Genius Kid he'd finish the project alone, while my friend and I would work together on a new project. Genius Kid smirked, saying this was good because we were just slowing him down anyway. We offered to share our notes with him, trying to be fair. Genius Kid arrogantly refused, claiming he didn't need our stupid notes because everything was in his head. He boasted that he could do the project even better on his own. We signed contracts saying we wouldn't share information and got to work. My friend and I rebuilt our glider in less than a week. We even turned it into a 2-for-1 toy set with different colored gliders. On presentation day, we were confident and prepared. Genius Kid looked nervous, which was a first. During the judging, I noticed some pages missing from our binder, the ones with our calculations. I approached our teacher and the judges. I politely told them that some pages were missing from our binder, specifically the ones with our calculations and proof of work. Our teacher checked Genius Kid's binder and found our missing pages. He'd scribbled his name next to ours, trying to pass it off as his work. The teacher questioned Genius Kid about why he took the pages. Genius Kid lied, claiming we had given our work to him. We showed everyone the contract he'd signed, refusing our help. Panicking, Genius Kid then accused us of stealing his work, saying he just took it back. One of the judges who worked with our dads examined the pages. He sternly warned Genius Kid that in the real world, stealing work like this would result in being fired and blacklisted from the industry. Genius Kid went pale and speechless. In the end, Genius Kid was disqualified and failed the project. My friend and I won an award for Best Design, but the real prize was seeing that smug kid finally get it in full. He was still a jerk after that, but he never messed with us again. I may not be a math whiz, but at least I know not to treat people badly. You never know when you might need their help someday. My wife and I had been saving for years to buy our dream home. We both worked hard. We lived frugally, skipped vacations, and put every extra penny into our savings. Finally, after 5 long years, we had enough for a down payment on a beautiful house in a quiet suburb. The day we moved in was one of the happiest of our lives. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a big backyard where we planned to plant a garden. We spent the first week unpacking and arranging furniture, feeling like we were finally home. That's when we met our neighbor. Let's call her Karen. It started innocently enough. Karen came over with a plate of cookies, welcoming us to the neighborhood. But things took a turn pretty quickly. She noticed our large backyard and asked if we'd be willing to give her a portion of it. When I asked her to clarify, she explained that she had a dog who needed more space to run. She pointed out that our yard was big and suggested that we, being just 2 people, didn't need all that space. I was stunned. Was she really asking us to give her part of our property? I politely declined, explaining that we bought the house because of the yard and were planning to use all of it. Karen then argued that she had lived there longer and that her dog deserved more space. She accused us of being selfish before storming off, leaving us bewildered. A few days later, we woke up to find Karen hosting a barbecue party on our lawn. When we confronted her, she acted like it was perfectly normal. She told us not to mind them and said they were just enjoying the neighborhood. I had to remind her that this was our property and she couldn't use it without permission. Karen brushed off our concerns, telling us not to be uptight and that neighbors should share. It only got worse from there. She started parking her car in our driveway, claiming the street was too crowded. She told other neighbors we were difficult and unfriendly. We tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. One day, we received a letter from a lawyer. Karen was trying to legally claim a portion of our backyard, arguing she had a right to it because she'd been in the neighborhood longer and it would improve her quality of life. We were furious but determined not to give in. We hired our own lawyer and fought back. The case was thrown out, but Karen didn't stop. The final straw came when we returned home from a weekend trip to find Karen inside our house. She had broken in and was lounging in our living room like she owned the place. When we walked in, she greeted us casually, claiming she was improving our property value and that the room needed a woman's touch. We called the police immediately. As they were taking her away, she was still yelling about how she deserved our house more than we did. In the end, Karen was charged with breaking and entering, trespassing, and attempted squatting. She was forced to move out of the neighborhood as part of her plea deal. We later found out she had a history of harassing neighbors in previous places she'd lived. It took some time, but we finally got to enjoy our dream home in peace. We installed a security system just in case and became good friends with our other neighbors, who were all relieved to see Karen go. It's hard to believe all of this happened just because we bought a house. But I guess some people feel entitled to things that aren't theirs. And now every time we sit in our backyard or tend to our garden, we appreciate it even more, knowing how hard we fought to keep it. I was just a regular guy working my way up in a big tech company. Started as an intern, then moved to junior developer, and finally landed a decent position as a software engineer. My wife and I had our son about 5 years ago. He's the light of our lives, always curious and full of energy. We're not rich, but we manage. We live in a modest apartment, drive a used car, and try to save what we can for our boy's future. Everything was going fine until about 6 months ago. That's when I got called into the chief executive officer's office. I was nervous, thinking maybe I'd messed up on a project or something, but it was much worse than that. The CEO looked at me with these intense eyes and told me he needed my help, saying it was a matter of life and death. I was confused and asked him what he meant. He explained that his daughter was sick. She needed a kidney transplant and fast. They'd been searching for a match but hadn't found one yet. I expressed my sympathy, not sure why he was telling me this. Then, to my shock, the CEO asked me to have my son tested as a potential donor. When I asked him to clarify, he confirmed that he wanted my healthy boy to potentially save his daughter's life. Was he really asking me to consider giving up one of my child's organs? I apologized and told him it was impossible, explaining that my son was just a child himself. The CEO tried to persuade me, saying he understood it was a big ask, but suggested I think about it. He hinted that they could make it worth my while. He started throwing out numbers. Huge numbers. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. But it didn't matter. There was no way I was going to put my son through something like that. I apologized again and refused, saying I wouldn't even consider it. That's when things got ugly. His face turned red, and he started yelling. He reminded me of who he was and threatened to end my career with a single phone call. I tried to make him understand that this wasn't about money or my job, but about my son's health and well-being. The CEO then compared our children, claiming his daughter was going to change the world someday and was worth 10 of my kid. I left his office in shock. Over the next few weeks, he kept trying to pressure me. He'd corner me in the hallway, send messages through other employees. The bribes got bigger, the threats more severe. But I stood my ground. Then, one day, my son didn't come home from school. My wife called me in a panic. We contacted the police, started searching everywhere. It was the worst night of our lives. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. It was the CEO. He told me he had tried to do this the easy way, and now we would do it his way. He presented his ultimatum. My boy for his girl. That was the deal. I was furious, terrified, and in disbelief all at once. I yelled at him, calling him insane and demanding he let my son go right away. The CEO calmly instructed me to bring my son to the hospital for the procedure or I'd never see him again. I hung up and immediately called the police. They traced the call and found where my son was being held. It turned out the CEO had hired some criminals to kidnap him. They arrested everyone involved, including the CEO. The trial was a media circus. The CEO tried to paint himself as a desperate father, doing anything to save his child. But the jury didn't buy it. He was convicted of kidnapping, attempted coercion, and a bunch of other charges. In the end, he lost everything. His company, his reputation, his freedom. And ironically, his actions made it impossible for his daughter to get the transplant she needed. Last I heard, she was put on a waiting list like everyone else. As for us, we're doing okay. My son is safe and healthy. I found a new job at a smaller company where they actually value their employees. It pays less, but I sleep better at night. Sometimes I think about how close we came to disaster, all because one man thought his money and power made him above the law, above basic human decency. It's a lesson I'll never forget, and one I make sure to teach my son every day.